Shut up and sit down.
Welcome back to the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, brought to you by Tacticam. Tacticam is the easiest way to begin filming your hunts. So easy, in fact, that Frank and Ernie are going to be using those all season this season. And we played around with them during turkey season, got the kinks worked out, and they got the budget-friendly solo that we're giving away through our Patreon each quarter, and they've got the 4K Tacticam 5.0. So there's something for everybody, no matter how good or bad or new or experienced you are to self-filming. But Tacticam also has the Reveal cell cams coming out. And, lots of people have got those already. We're still waiting for ours, and looking forward to getting those out there and getting you some information on how those work. But this episode, you've heard me talk, and you've probably seen on social media some of our stuff about the Vitals Live. So this podcast is a little bit different. This one was recorded live on the Vitals Live platform with Alex Chopp, the owner, John Eberhardt, myself, and John. And if you were on any of our Zoom meetings with the Patreons or anything like that, John's computer has been through the ringer, and he gets a little bit of a whistle on his microphone. So I did my best to edit that out on here, but just be aware of that. And this podcast is going to be up on our YouTube page. So if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube page, check that out. But the actual podcast itself from the Vitals Live, that recording of the video portion is going to be on there. I'm going to upload that as soon as I upload this. So it should be on there nearly simultaneously. You can check that out at the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast YouTube page. And as you listen to this, you'll see why it's best digested as a video thing. It's question and answer. You can see throughout this, what I'm doing is showcasing the things that we can do with the Vitals Live. We've got some questions directly for Alex about the platform. We've got some questions for John about hunting. And then there were some other people that were attending, just watching and typing and asking questions, and I brought them in to answer some questions. So there is a couple cameos by some of our friends and some guys that have been on the podcast in the past. So actually, one of the guys on this podcast is the most frequent guest on this podcast. And shoot me a message if you can guess which guy it is, and I'll get you one of our new t-shirts sent out. So the first person to get a hold of me and say, this is the most frequent guest on your podcast, I'll get you one of the shirts. And we've got shirts and hats available for the people that were asking about those. But like I said, this is a really fun episode, and it showcases what we're doing. And with our Patreon giveaway, for all of our patrons that help us out through patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. What we do is they donate to the show to help us with equipment and hosting fees and all that sort of thing. And we take that money, and rather than use it for those things that would be helpful, we buy a bunch of stuff and give it away. So we're giving away, that the Tacticam Solo. We're giving away from Base Map. Base Map helps us out. We're running that this year, and they give away one of their subscriptions, as well as a swag pack, hat, shirt, and some of that stuff. And there's also a code you can use, Chronicles, when you sign up on your computer, save you 20%. So, it ends up being like $24 for the year, and we give away one of those. And then I try to give away something hunting related, so we're going to be giving away a set of bee sticks, as well as a set of helium sticks, and there'll probably be some more things added as we go along through this quarter, but those are the things that I've got set up. But we do give a subscription out monthly for this Vitals Live platform, which showcases John Eberhardt, Dan Infalt. We've got some other things scheduled, Greg Litzinker, And there are some free product new up-and-coming companies that are free. So if you want to just check it out, and see what it's all about, see how the platform works, you can check that out at thevitalslive.com, and you click on the schedule, and it'll show you which ones are free, who's going to be on there. And we've got the Ranch Fairy is going to be on there coming up in August and September, as well. Like I said, Greg Litzinger, and we've got some other guys that are on the schedule. So definitely a real cool thing. But definitely check that out. You're going to like this. It's best digested, I think, as a video. But as you're listening along, you'll get the gist of it right off the bat. So I do my best to make it both palatable for just the audio listener as well as the full video thing. But you can check that out on our YouTube page. Again, you can check out all the rest of that stuff at our Patreon page at patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles Podcast, or you can just go to our website, bowhunterchroniclespodcast.com, and it's got all the information for all of this on there. It doesn't have a link to the Vitals Live, but I'll put one of those up there here very shortly. Aside from that, if you just want to listen, follow along, we totally appreciate that. If you could tell somebody about the show, that helps us out. Gets us, if you like this and you think this would be helpful for someone, let them know. Leave us a review. We get thousands and thousands of downloads, and I don't think we're at 100 reviews yet. So if you listen to the show and you like this, just leave us a review or click the 5-star, 1-star, whatever you think we rate, because that's the only way that we can get better. But like I said, this one's fun. If you get a chance, check it out on our YouTube page. Please subscribe, and I know you're going to like it. It's really fun. And if you don't listen all the way to the end, you're going to miss out on some really awesome stuff, because what happens at the end of this podcast is probably the best way to showcase, how this Vitals Live platform works. And you can check that out on the YouTube page, and I'm going to put some clips of that up as I get to it. But I know you're going to like this one. Thanks everybody for listening, and please give me some feedback on the platform, how I did. If you got questions for Alex, anything like that, let me know, and we will get those things addressed. But thanks for listening. Enjoy the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Tonight is a jumbled mess. It's a whole bunch of things coming together, which is how we usually work this. So right now we are live on the Vitals Live platform, doing our podcast as a web seminar, I've been doing, hosting and helping out with for the past month and a half. So on here tonight is myself, John Boersma, John Eberhart, and the creator of this platform, the brainchild, Alex Chopp. And so some of the guys that are in this room have seen this before, and they've been on the platform. They know everything about it. For the listener, for the guys that are popping in here, Alex, can you, I guess the guys that even that have been in these, we haven't really seen anything from Alex. We've only maybe seen that he's in the room, or maybe that he's typed something here and there. So can you give us a little bit of an introduction and like your hunting style and kind of who we're talking with tonight, Alex?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Alex Chopp. As Adam said, I guess you could say I'm responsible for the Vitals Live. And the Vitals Live is largely a result of an incredible amount of boredom during the pandemic, and some personal frustration just with learning and finding information. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I am an obsessive bow hunter, thanks to my dad. I learned to bow hunt following him around in the UP. That's largely where I learned to scout. As I progressed as a hunter, I moved over to John's books. I've read all of his books, and that's why John was actually my first call for this, was because of how much I appreciated the information he shared in his books. as far as my hunting style, I've never been able to focus 100% of my time on hunting, as most people, right? So I've kind of learned to adapt, and I guess built my own process for trying to be successful in the woods year in and year out. Again, with limited time because you're dealing with a big, busy schedule. So most of my hunting, I've never had any private land to hunt, so I've always been, battling it out on public land all over the state. Hunted out. I grew up in Grand Rapids, like I said, so I spent a lot of time in the Ionia State Game area. Now I hunt on the southeast side of Michigan, which is where I live now. I live in Royal Oak. And so my process, as far as hunting style, is pretty simple. I always have 3 to 4 spots that I consider test spots every year. I hunt them nonstop. I really, in John's world, mess them up, right? I go in and I go after them hard, and I want to see what's going on there. And I hunt them a lot. I overhunt them. If they have potential, I'll kind of add them to my list. So over time, I've built kind of a portfolio of spots that I consider to be they're just very consistent. I can tell you a 3-day span, if I get the right weather, there will be a buck that I consider a shooter there. And that's just how I've learned to manage my busy schedule over the years and still get an opportunity at some decent bucks. So.
All right. So one of the things I'm going to bring up right now is because I feel like, normally I'm very professional and I have to manage this. Alex, I think your phone keeps pinging. Is that you? That's one of the, turn off your notifications. It's like the number.
The bachelor party group text. So I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I kept hearing it. What the hell?
Yeah, that's the number one rule in podcasting. I learned that from Kurt Geyer, the working class bow hunter. He said, that's a pro tip, turn your notifications off. So
that makes sense. About myself, I've never done anything like this, so you guys will all have to bear with me.
So that being the case, and for the guys that are watching along that have been following along for the entire time for these, you'll notice I'm drinking a beer tonight. This is, that's the way that podcasts are run too. So it's just kind of the way that yeah. So that's kind of how we operate. But never having done anything like this before, and having that basis, right? Why bring this to fruition? I mean, yes, everybody has a bit of frustration, and they do, all sorts of things, and there's podcasts out there, and there's everything. But so why put yourself? I mean, because at some point you had to have said, well, man, if I can't find somebody to do this, I'm going to have to be the guy, right?
Yeah. So, couple things. So as far as the personal frustration goes, honestly, I've just been frustrated finding information in the past, not just hunting wise, just in general. And, this just popped into my head. This was just a random thought that, started to seem like a better idea as things moved along. And I just, I had the time during this pandemic when my day job was basically completely shut down. So I'm like, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. But, I think that for me personally, there's also room for personal growth, right? I'd like to put myself out there a little more. I'm involved with another hunting company, and eventually we're going to have to be doing more of these things. So this was somewhat selfish, right? That I wanted to start to put myself out there, at least start learning, because if you're not learning, you're just treading water, right? You're not progressing. So I really believe in making yourself uncomfortable, and that's how you progress as a person. So
excellent transition. Let's talk about making people uncomfortable. John Boersma, we just were talking to, we were on the Surfside podcast, and they were asking us about where our podcast came from and those ideas. And then it kind of spawned into this sort of conversation about things that we've taken away since we've been podcasting and things like that. Where do you see the value for yourself? I mean, because you're very analytical, so, and what are some frustrations just with straight podcasts that you've encountered?
There goes the phone again.
And
that's number one frustration right there.
I'm leaving the conversation.
No, I mean, I guess the takeaway, what was the question? Outline it again. So very long.
That's what I do. So from that, from listening to podcasts and things like that, like where do you get your information, or how do you see? Is it more of listening to a long form conversation and working through it? Because I know a lot of times, like the whole time you are already answering the question that's being asked as it's happening. So when you're trying to draw information from podcasts and from learning platforms now in this new day and age, where back in the day it was books and magazines and articles and things like that. So, I mean, what are you looking for in a podcast, in a digital learning thing? Because we talked about, the Elk 101 type thing and whatever.
Right. Cody Rich has a really good one. I look for the information. Like right now, getting ready for Elk. So I'm going through and I use Podbean. So I look through and I look at all my, the ones I subscribe to, and, find something that looks interesting. And then I just go through, I'll kind of like skim over the outline on it usually. And then I'll just start listening to it. I got a lot of time during the day. I'll be out working on the garden, working on the house. And so I just listen to them. Sometimes, it gets off topic. Obviously that's one, like we always get off topic. But,
that's the beer.
Right. But, I just have enough time to go through them all and pick and choose which ones are good and find information I'm looking for. But, I have Eberhardt's books and I still will skim through those once in a while. There's all kinds of information out there on YouTube. This new platform, like when we first started doing these Zoom meetings, that was like, it was kind of refreshing actually, getting to see and interacting with the people, like our Patreons and stuff like that. It's actually been a good thing. So
okay,
hopefully going forward it'll look better.
Yeah, and I was just looking to transition that into you, Alex, just by saying, one of the things that you're trying to do with this, or I guess what are your goals with this platform here?
Yeah, so I actually I took a picture of the original concept drawing that I did when I was sitting there brainstorming, trying to get my thoughts together. So I'm going to show that, which will also kind of show you some of the capabilities here. And this just kind of goes through a thought process of how somebody learns. And I guess I should rephrase that, how I think about learning in the process that goes through my head, right? And so can you guys see my screen okay?
Yeah. Yep, we can see that.
You can see this document here.
Yep.
So this was the sketch. It's a really simple sketch, right? But I just, when I was going through this process of trying to put this platform together, I thought about it. And another thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that one of the other things that I see all the time is people post on Facebook. They'll post a random question. It's actually a very, it's a question that requires an in-depth answer, and it requires an answer for somebody who is an expert, like John or Dan or Garrett, somebody who knows what they're talking about. And when they post it on Facebook, they end up getting this long, drawn out, random spitting of answers. And that was another, I was frustrated for them. I never post questions like that. But, so anyway, I went through this process and I said, okay, so if you have a question, what do? You sit there and you think, how do I get the answer to that question? But the problem is that how involves so many details. Who's going to answer it? Where are they going to answer it? When? So, if I have a question about hunting, hands down, me personally, I want John or Dan answering it. And both of them have different styles, and they may, certain questions may be better for Dan and certain questions might be better for John. So instead of going and scouring through a bunch of, YouTube videos from every vendor in the world and just scouring the internet for what I'm looking for, I wanted to bring that all to one place. I wanted all of the information, all of the sources to be in one place in a very, very structured format. So that if you have one of those questions that's specific, it's about strategy, it's a question that's meant for somebody who's been doing this and has been successful for a long time. I wanted to create something where you know exactly where to go, you know when to go there, and you know how to find the answer. So that was really the main goal for me. And again, it was just personal frustration on my part. So,
okay, and I took that down. As one of the cool things about this platform, and for people that aren't watching this in real time, we're going to have this up, so we'll be able to put it on our YouTube, and Alex will be able to use it with the Vitals Live. But so as all these panelists and whoever's the host or whatever has the control of the screen, and you can take and move things around, and so he's sitting there talking just with a graphic up. With John Eberhardt, we've been doing these, and he'll pull up his screen, and then he'll be doing something on the side. And I don't have the viewer view, so I don't know if they can see him dancing around, putting on a saddle, pantomiming, hanging off the side of a tree or whatever. So I think they would like to catch that. So I'll take his screen down occasionally. And so for you, John Eberhardt, being an author, an old school guy, self-proclaimed, not very techie, what are you thinking of this whole process and how it's all coming to be?
Well, when Alex called me, I don't think a lot of people know what Alex does. He's a very professional person. He actually teaches. He's a medical instrument rep, and he teaches doctors that do, what do you call that kind of surgery where you stick the camera down inside?
I do all urology procedures. I work for Olympus and sell the cameras that go in your body.
But you also teach the doctors, and you sit in on operations, teach them, and kind of tell doctors, staff what to do. So Alex is an extremely techie person, and I am not. And this format has been being done in other avenues, other industries. And Alex is kind of ahead of the curve. When he called me, he asked if I'd be interested in, being a guest speaker or guest whatever. Call me, and I said, yeah, anything that's new, and the hunting industry is really small compared to a lot of other industries. We might think it's big, but it's really small in comparison to a lot of other stuff. And so this is new to the hunting industry, and I believe this is the first time this has ever been done. And so it's going to be a process, and I think there's going to be some tweaks down the road, and but I sure hope it will work. Moving forward, we've got some really good guests lined up. I know I got a text from Zach from Hunting Public, Tom Nelson from American Archer, and a lot of people that want to do this. It's just a matter of fitting into their schedule. So,
yeah, and
I'm always willing to help people. That's what I do. I do a lot of podcasts. That's what I write articles. I want people to be the best that they can be. I don't like to be greedy. And I did want to mention something to Charlie, because I think Charlie was on here and he asked that question about that crops butting up public land yesterday. And I mentioned prepping a tree along a crop field if he thinks it's going to be in standing corn. I just wanted to also say, because I mentioned to do his rattle sequence in the morning, he should also do it about half hour before dark. And he should expect his shot to come in the corn. In other words, the buck would come probably from the cornfield. He would not come out of the corn. He'd probably have to shoot it in the corn. So I just wanted to throw that in there, because I forgot to mention that last time.
Yeah, and so what John's talking about, and one of the things I think that's very interesting about this is, if you're listening to this as a podcast traditionally, and that's how we're going to put it out amongst other things, is you are generally everything is scenario based, right? So what's ended up happening is you're saying, well, this one time when I was in Kansas, I hunted near some corn, and I've rattled in bucks, and I've rattled in bucks here, there, or everywhere. And for a guy like Charlie, who was able to last night come on here with a video, so you can make eye contact, you can see whether he's understanding or not, and if John is understanding your question, and ask a very specific question about big timber Minnesota next to crop fields. And then, by having these, I guess, so frequently, John's able to come back on here and see that Charlie's here and say, hey, I just want to follow up. And so that's something where with a traditional podcast, YouTube, something like that, like you might be able to ask a question via comment and you might get something back. But right now, what we're allowing, what's happening is I can take over and I can just bring Charlie up and, they can have that conversation. So that's one of the pretty cool things that's able to happen. And so I guess, Alex, from that, we're talking about, kind of the idea, and now it's come to fruition. And I know with everything that you've got going on, it's, somewhat probably super stressful. But where do you see this going into the future, and like what do we have lined up? What are you doing with this information then?
So we take all of the live sessions, right, and we record them. And this kind of touches on part of the reason for how this platform is designed, right? Because everybody learns in different ways. For me, if you had me listen to something, I can't retain anything without a visual. Some people can read a book and retain the entire book. I can't do that either. I actually need a combination of the two to retain any kind of information. So point being is everybody learns in different ways, and we want to be able to offer the information in all of the different ways. So all of the live sessions are recorded and searchable by expert. And then we take that a step further, and admittedly we are behind on this right now because they're sharing so much incredible information. But we're taking those recorded sessions and we're cutting them down into short, like TikTok-esque 3-minute videos that are literally titled with, how does John Eberhart target moon phases? What does John Eberhart think about the weather? Things like that. And all of that is even more searchable, like Adam talked about earlier, where you'll be able to search certain tags like weather, moon, time, phase of the season, so on and so forth, right? So we're slowly building this database that eventually, it already is extremely informative. You can go on there, and if you've hunted for 25 years, you're still going to learn some stuff on there. I guarantee it. So that's the end goal, is to have this database that's 100% searchable, so that when you do, in fact, have a question, you can literally go search that question and up will pop a video of John or Dan or Garrett, Mario, any of these incredible hunters, and they're going to answer your question. So that's really the goal. And
if you ask a question about what to plant in a 100-acre clear cut, you'll get a not professional answer from not a very good hunter like myself. So,
hey, I thought that was a good answer.
Well, you have to say that, I think. So I want to open this up, just like I say, to anybody on here that has any questions, because it's somewhat rare to be able to watch, interact. There's a few platforms that are out there that you can that you can follow up and ask questions, but as of right now, there's not. So if I'm waiting for somebody to jump on, otherwise I'm just going to promote somebody. So that's going to be. Looks like I'm going to go ahead and try and bring on Walter here.
We got a hand raised.
Okay. Let's see. All right, here we go. Matt, we're going to bring you up here. Let's see here. We're going to unmute you. All right, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, so you had a question.
Yeah, you guys talk a lot about, getting tactic talk from John and Dan, and those are all whitetail specific. I was wondering if that's going to be expanded upon in the future to, you start going out elk and mule deer and other guests.
Yes, that's the goal. So this is kind of our proof of concept, right? If this works and it seems like people have an interest in it, absolutely this will be expanded. I'm a huge fisherman as well, so I'd love to make this available, on a very broad scale in the outdoor industry. So
I will. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like when Tom Nelson comes on, and he's under contract with Cabela's, so I don't think he can come on until January. But he's hunted for everything. And I'm sure you could ask Tom Nelson a question about any species because he's pretty much done it all. And there will be guests that have hunted. I've shot 2 elk on public land in Colorado, but I am by no means an elk expert. But Tom Nelson, I would consider an expert, and I'm sure there will be experts in bear hunting and elk hunting and, antelope or mule deer or whatever in the future. That's the plan.
Okay. And then I just made Matt back into just a regular attendee, so now he can't talk or anything like that. So if he's wondering why aren't they answering my question now, I've demoted him to regular attendee for people that are listening to this. That's kind of like what we can do. So we're going to bring on our good friend Tom Taylor, who's got his hand raised, and he's got a question. We are going to unmute him, and we'll see. I think he's got to agree to it because it tells me to unmute. All right, here we go. How you doing tonight, Tom?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Hi, Tom.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right. I got a real life strategy question, I guess, for John. I travel around the state a lot for work. I'm never know where I'm going to be from day to day, week to week. I hunt a lot of state land. I think 20 to 21 of my sits last year were on new pieces of state land that I had never seen before other than, e-scouting or looking at some maps. What specific terrain for southern Michigan, southern half of Lower Peninsula, what specific terrain, if you had to go into a cold piece like that, would you key in on public land?
Well, it would depend on the time of season. Rut or early season. Early season, I would definitely key in on oaks, and I would want them absolutely as tight to security cover as possible. In other words, there was a cattail marsh or a swamp with water in it and dry humps in the swamp, where deer could bed, and there was oaks right on the perimeter. That would be where I would probably look to set up, because Michigan's a unique state. It's very, very difficult on public land, and the bucks are pretty nocturnal. So you're not going to get a buck that's going to be very far during daylight hours, very far away from security cover. And like on an evening hunt, a buck may come out of the security cover of a marsh or a cattail marsh or a swamp, or some cut over tall saplings or something like that, or standing corn. He might come out of that heavy security cover, but it's going to be in the last 5 to 10 minutes before dark, so he's not going to go very far. If there's some sort of a mass tree that he could eat right on the edge, that's what he's going to do. One of the biggest bucks I ever shot was a big 12-point, was on public land in December, and it was right on the edge of a big tall weed, 12-foot tall weeds, after gun season. And now this was not in Michigan, so this was in Illinois, mid-December. But it was right on the edge of a big tall wheat field, and there was a locust tree that drops those big long beans, and we had a lot of snow. We had like 8 inches of snow, and they were the easiest food source for the deer to eat because just one paw in the snow underneath that tree, and 4 or 5 of those big long bean pods popped up. The snow was too deep for them to eat acorns because they had to dig too much for it. Most of the acorns probably been scarfed up by the turkeys and the deer prior to December. So I would definitely key on mass trees as close to bedding areas where, the densest bedding areas that I can find. Because by what you sound like you're doing, when you're hunting that many pieces of public land, you're doing a lot of freelancing. You're obviously doing a lot of freelancing if you're hunting, 15 different parcels of public land. You can't walk in, and they're almost all evening hunts. If you can't walk in the morning in the dark and find a place to hunt, it's pretty much impossible. So it's got to be afternoon hunt. So that's what I'd key on. I'd key on food. Food would have to be very, very tight to security cover.
So one thing that you talked about last night, John, that I hadn't heard before, and I turned Tom's audio off, so he's back to attendee. But one of the things I know he does a lot of e-scouting and things like that. One thing that comes to mind that you'd mentioned last night that was some good information was the those terrain dumps. So can you mention that a little bit? Because I think that was some pretty good insight that it ended up that I knew that I was hunting when you said it, but it never kind of clicked until then.
Yeah, it's where a terrain dump is basically where maybe an oak ridge, drops off on one side. Because obviously, if you're going to have a stand of trees, hardwood trees, it's going to be on dry ground. And a lot of times that'll drop off into some sort of marsh, cattails, or there may be a stand of pines next to it, or a stand of next to a tall CRP field. Basically, a terrain dump is where several different terrain features, 2 or 3, sometimes even 4, all kind of come together in one spot. And here in central Michigan, I've got 2 spots like that, and I just found another one, which it's actually going to be my next YouTube post. I just found one on public land down in southern Michigan, and it's definitely a terrain feature dump. There's a big stand of pines up on a hill, autumn olive coming down, and there's this opening. There's cattail marsh on one side. It's just where a lot of stuff comes together, and there's a little small opening surrounded by everything else, just dense cover. And there's scrapes in that opening, because anytime you find a small opening in a terrain featured dump, there's going to be scrapes in it because there's doe activity. Wherever there's doe activity, there's going to be buckhead. I would if what was his name, Matt?
Tom,
I would also, if it's something where you're going to be going back to those properties, next fall, it's kind of late for this year, but if you know where you're going to be working next fall, I would go during post-season, and I would actually scout the public lands that are close to where you're going to be working next fall. Because you can do a lot more scouting, and you can find a lot more about a piece of property when all the foliage is down and all the sign is still there from last fall, and you can beat the crap out of the property without being fearful of spooky deer. You can just do a lot more during postseason than you can do going in preseason or the day you're actually going to hunt and freelance in. That's flying by the seat of your ass, in my opinion. Preseason scouting, to me, is a waste of time in a state like Michigan. Because you're spooking stuff. You're altering deer traffic, and you're turning bucks nocturnal. The bucks I want to go out turning nocturnal by just being in the woods. So during postseason, you can go in, and then when you go in during postseason, you can actually look for stuff beyond just a mass tree on the edge of cover or a terrain featured dump. Or, like I mentioned yesterday about Dave, when he was hunting in Iowa, he was following this river, and it had real high banks, and then there was an area where the river was flat on both sides, and you were crossing there because it was shallower, and there were scrapes and runways all over the place because it was basically a river funnel. And, he found that. But when you go out there in postseason, you can actually scout and, prep locations in bedding areas. And when you get into the rut phases, that's where the bucks breed the does. Mature bucks, they push the does down into those bedding areas, and that's where they spend most of their day breeding does. So, you can't go in during season or during preseason and scout bedding areas without buttering them up. So that's one unique thing about postseason as well. And then if you know you're going to go back, you can hunt those, next year when you go back.
So right now we kind of I've kind of hijacked the show here a little bit, just to kind of showcase some of the things that we can do, and we're going to get back to that here in just a second. But I've got other questions coming in, basically directed towards you, Alex, for the platform. So I'm not trying to not make this about the platform, Alex. I'm just.
No, this is the point. Let the audience drive the conversation, right?
Yeah,
so
most certainly. So we've got a couple different questions about the searchability, and then he's in kind of like what that's going to look like on those vital cuts. How is that going to be organized? Where is it going to be? Who's it going to be available to? That sort of thing. And then Jason, who's been on here, like I say, almost every single one of these, is saying it looked like there was a forum on your drawing. And so what does that look like in the future?
So I guess the first question is, to answer the first question about the searchability of the videos. So we're able to go in and tag. This is just very simple, right? We can tag these videos. I manually tag with, for the vital cuts, right? The little short snippets, those are easy, because it's one topic. So, and the point, the topic of those little cuts is obvious, and it's supposed to be obvious. So those are just simply tagged with, weather, rut strategy. I'll put in, 5 of them or so for each video. So that way, if there's 5 relevant terms, but for some of them, there's only one relevant term, weather. So it's just a manual process of me going in and tagging them, and then you'll be able to see a list of these tags that you can click. I also tag them with the expert that, is running through it. So if you're a guy that is hunting primarily in Michigan, you probably want to be watching, you probably want most of your information from John. So you can go in and search John. Now, if you're out in Minnesota or Wisconsin, you've got Dan and Garrett out there. Or maybe it's a gear-related question, right? That's Garrett Prawl all day, and you could search all of his videos and watch them like that. So that's how we're doing it now, and that search functionality is going to have to be optimized over time with the help of everybody who's a part of this, right? We need to learn how we can optimize that search function because, again, everybody learns a little bit different. We want to make sure there are options for making that as easy as possible. But that's how it works right now. Search a topic, relevant videos come up. So,
hey, Adam?
Yes, sir.
Can I mention something? Because that gentleman earlier wanted to know something about, whether we were going to talk about elk hunting and stuff. One thing I did want to say about elk hunting, I've been out twice. I've shot 2 bulls, public land, and I thought it was very similar and much easier than whitetail hunting. I found that all the people that were out there bow hunting, stayed within a quarter to 3/8 of a mile from roads. And I found some places up on top at like 8,000 to 9,000 feet. We were camped at about 5,000 feet where the elk were bedding. That's where they were going down into the meadows in the evening, coming back in the morning, or just before daylight. So I did just what I do when I'm whitetail hunting. I got up at 3 a.m. and I was up on top of that mountain about an hour before daylight in the areas where I butted them up for bedding, the 2 days prior. And they came right up, and they were right there, right around me. That's how that happened. So it was exactly the same. You just had to get in there. I just got in there and got up the mountain way before the elk came back up.
You must have been doing your scent-free hunt.
No, I wasn't.
No?
God, thermals go upward in the morning, so I was above.
I say, because as they're, in the early morning, when it's still cold, the thermals are still coming down, and as the sun comes up and heats up, and they start going back up.
No, I was not wearing sunblock. That was in 97 and 99.
All right, well, we're going to get to another question here. We're going to see if we can bring on somebody with a video here. Let's say, all right, let's see.
Hey, there he is.
All right.
What's up, gentlemen?
How's it going, Walter?
It's going good, Alex. Love the platform. This seems like a really cool idea. Just really a neat thing, man. Keep pushing forward with this one. Got a question for John. It's easy to learn things from successful hunts. We know you are perhaps one of the most successful bow hunters out there. But I want to hear about one of the hunts that didn't go right and what you learned from that hunt. Tell us about the one that got away.
Which one? Okay, probably the one that I think of the most was earlier in my career. It would have been in late 70s. And I was hunting in a saddle. It had a ridge on each side, and it was cuddle. So there were saplings on both sides. And then at the bottom of the saddle, it was actually just small weeds. And I was in an oak, kind of at one end of the saddle. So the deer were actually coming out of the saplings. And they were probably 8 to 10 feet tall saplings. They were the does and fawns and the sporting bucks were coming out of the saplings, coming down into the saddle, and then filtering out by me into some more oaks out in a more open area. And this was up in northern Michigan. And it was during pre-rut, and all of a sudden this monster buck, and when I say monster back then, you hardly ever saw a 2.5-year-old 90-inch acorn. I mean, we had a million gun hunters, and there was nobody passed up anything. So I mean, you rarely saw a 2-year-old. And this buck came down out of the saplings on the one side, and he was probably, I'm guessing he was 140 inches, which was something that was totally. You just didn't see 140 inches. That was an anomaly by far. And he came down and he stopped at about 35 yards from my tree. And I had a 35-yard pin. Now I had already had 11 does and fawns, one, I think it was 6-point, had already walked down through that saddle and walked right by my tree within like 12 yards. And he's standing right where they had came down and came through.
Sure.
So he's 35 yards, broadside, beautiful afternoon. It was like an hour and a half before dark, just standing there, just testing the wind. I had a 35-yard pin. I shot leagues a lot, 35 yards back then. That was when I had a compound. It was a chip shot. And I drew my bow, and I said, you know what? All these other deer that came down right by me, like 12-yard broadside, and he's right where they came through, so there's no reason whatsoever for him not to follow them and go out the same way they did. So I let the bow up, and he just stood there, and all of a sudden, he just took off up the other side of the ridge, up into those other saplings. And when he got up there, I saw a doe up there kind of run back into the saplings. So there was a doe there that he saw or winded that I did not know was there. So that would have been my biggest buck by far at that time. And I had a shot that I know I would have been able to kill him because he was dead broadside, a big deer, 35 yards. And I passed it up thinking I would get a better shot. And so I learned at that point in time, when you get the first shot that you think you got a 90% chance of making a kill, and it was dead broadside, take it.
And so, Walter, I didn't turn you off on this one because, you're used to asking questions, and that's not an issue. And you've been, so I've said this on the podcast before. I say it every time I talk to Walter, but Walter's the one, when I was getting into podcasting, I reached out to him and I said, what can I do what advice do you have for me? And he said, don't do it. He said, don't start a hunting podcast. And that's a honest to God truth. He told me, stay out of my space. So if Alex were to ask you that same question, what advice would you have for him, for this platform going forward, seeing it, kind of in the infancy and kind of seeing where it's going?
Oh, well, first off, let me just clarify. I wasn't being territorial. This was at the boom of when everybody was buying microphones and starting podcasts. And it was just kind of easy. I was hearing from a lot of people that their podcasts were getting lost in that shuffle. And for me, I thought if you waited maybe 6 months, that if he had dropped it, it would have been a little easier. So Adam's become a close friend of mine. We talk pretty frequently. But I think my advice to everyone who wants to do something like this is always find some way of doing it better or being unique, both of which are good things. And I found that competition is a great thing because iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel. So by having Adam out there and listening to how he hosts, I've been able to become a better podcast host myself. But I think my advice for you is you've kind of got your own little niche here, right? You're going to find people who are willing to invest in you and what you're investing in when they join this. And I would caution that as growth continues, if it hits a lull or something like that, to just maybe press on before adapting too much, because sometimes it's easy to think maybe you aren't doing the right thing and, you just plateau periodically, and staying true to what you have right now, I think would be insanely valuable moving forward. And it may take some time, especially given the format that you have. It's going to be a little more exclusive, right? People are going to have to buy into what you're doing and how it's different. But that is your target audience. And it may just be different than what it is for Adam, who's got his own niche, or what I've got down here in Florida. And just stay the course, because I think you've done all the homework to have a really successful product and podcast and media outlet. Don't let other influences really take you off course, because you've done everything. That little chart, that diagram you did was absolutely awesome to see, because I didn't do that until like a year into it, and really, channeled myself and focused what I was doing. And Adam played a big part of that, actually.
Well, I appreciate that.
Appreciate that. So,
all right. We'll sign you off here, Walter, and we'll make you. But yeah, like I say, for those that are just listening to the podcast, I had him up on the video. He was able to, look me in the eye when he lied and said that he just wanted me to wait 6 months. So I could see right through that, because he's a ginger. He doesn't have a soul. So Alex, for you, how has this been? How long? This was a pretty rapid thing. So with what are we seeing? What can we expect in terms of like growing pains or this or that, as we go through this, and how do you kind of put out those fires? Because where John and I, Walt, and I'm a little disappointed we had another guy that had a question on here, but it looks like he had to get off. What do you, we don't have to do this in real time. If everything goes sideways, I can say, well, can we just do this tomorrow? Or I just don't have to publish it, or whatever. Everything that's happening is happening live in real time. So, what can we expect? Because it has been such a quick thing. And then what do you have in store for those types of situations?
Well, as far as a troubleshooting plan, I don't have one. So that's, a learning process. It's live, right? Anything live is what it is. It's pure, and we can't change what happens because it's happening and it's being viewed in real time. So, I guess in a way that could be seen as a disadvantage, but I think it also adds to, a lot of the hunting YouTube channels, or certainly the Outdoor Network, right? Nothing against any of that. But for me, it's very entertainment focused. Like I don't watch any of that unless I want some entertainment. If I want pure information, I come here. And I think that we have to have this live to really get that experience of a premium educational experience. For anybody who, just think back to school, right? If you have a question that pops into your head in the moment, you can raise your hand and ask the question right then and there in that moment when you have the thought. And for me personally, I need that to learn. I can't, I need real time feedback on what's happening in my head, if that makes sense. So, there are going to be challenges, and there already have been, right? I mean, anybody who was here for Garrett's session, we learned that his internet isn't the best, or some connection when he's on isn't the best. Well, in that scenario, we started to lose audio. So what we had to do is actually transfer the audio from his computer to his phone, and he had to hold his phone, and we were able to get the audio. But it certainly isn't perfect, and that's part of this whole proof of concept. If this works and we continue to grow, to be blunt, financially, this whole thing will be rebuilt into a full-blown platform. Keep in mind, I have no idea how to code, and I'm the one coding this website. So issues exist, and there's no way around it. Web development is absurdly expensive. I would have went completely broke. We'd be done already, right, if I had it built out. But that is what you'll see in the future. And reinvesting in the technology is very important to me. I have goals of bringing this into the woods so that you're not just sitting in a room like this with John. You're hunting with John, and you're scouting with John. That's my goal for this. So that's kind of the progression of the technology in my head, at least. So I don't know if that answers your question. I hope I didn't go on a tangent.
Yeah, that's fine. Another question had popped up here, and I'll bring on Charlie here in a second. But I was going to ask our John. So John Boersma, Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Thanks for tuning in tonight. What questions do you have about this, or what's your take? Because this is kind of like not unlike a lot of our other podcasts where I'm telling you, hey, this is where you got to be, this is what you got to do. But you're a little bit familiar with the platform. But what are your thoughts? Because I know that our listeners value your opinion quite a bit.
No, like I said kind of earlier in this session, when this COVID thing started and we started doing Zoom meetings, this actually is way more informational to me. Being able to sit and actually, talk to John, or even if I was just an attendee, which most of the time I am, just watching you guys and listening to Adam's questions. But no, this is a great platform. It's only going to get better, I believe.
Well, and you remembered when we started out, like, again, we talked about that a little bit last night on another podcast, but like when we started out, we didn't know what we were doing. And, to a point, every single time I have a podcast, I'm setting the stuff up and John's like, you would think after 100 and however many episodes, you'd be able to figure this out. It's like, there's so many chords, there are so many things. It's just, I'll get there. But yeah, it is quite a process, right?
This whole thing is a learning process, in my opinion. And, it's like when I wrote my first book, I sucked at English. I almost didn't graduate from high school because I was so bad in English. And making a leap to write a book was a big, big challenge to me, and it was totally out of my comfort level. Doing seminars, when I started doing seminars in front of big crowds, that was totally out of my comfort level. I came from a pretty meager background. So, if this is something new and it's chancy and it's going to develop, I think it has an opportunity to develop into something huge. When Alex was talking to me about taking cameras out into the woods and be live, show what you're doing, prepping a tree or looking at this location, and okay, how do you enter this location? How do you exit this location? There's just so many things you can do, and we're just groundbreaking this territory in the hunting community. So, I look at it from that aspect.
And Alex, I'm surprised that this hasn't come up yet, and I'm remiss because I didn't ask the question. We didn't put this out right at the beginning. But Charlie's question is probably the question that everybody has, and I think it kind of even goes back to what Walter was saying when there was this podcast boom and everybody wanted to get into it. His question is, and I'll read it to you specifically, was, do you plan on keeping this platform as is, experts sharing how they are successful, or is the intent to incorporate sponsorships and things down the road? Like I said, I'm very remiss for not asking this because I know this is something that's very important to you.
Yeah. So the reason that this is a paid platform is the answer to this question, right? We want this to be completely pure information with no outside influence. I'm involved with the hunting company. John's involved with the hunting company. You guys might be as well. But what happens here is supposed to be just pure learning and pure information on how to make you more successful in the woods. This, and this might sound cliche, but this is real. If people aren't successful in the woods, they're not going to keep hunting, because hunting can kick your ass if you let it, right? And so, it's very important to me that this information stays pure. Now, with that being said, I think that there's value in having information from industry, right? So you've seen some of the sessions, anybody who's looked at the schedule has seen startup spotlights. The point of that is, there's a couple points of it. First of all, I'm a big proponent of small business. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I love entrepreneurship. I really do. So I want to help those people as much as possible, especially in the hunting world. But two, for the viewers, you're going to be seeing some really exciting technology. In fact, at the end of this month, we have a brand new artificial intelligence company coming on that is just, this guy, he's so passionate about what he does. And when you learn what he's doing with data mining and how he's applying that to hunting, well, if you're anything like me, you're shocked that there's somebody out there doing this. And I think that's really, really cool, as long as it doesn't, affect the strategy or whatever the intent of certain sessions are. As long as it's kept separate, I think it's valuable. So my goal is to not have any sponsors, just to keep the information pure. So,
yeah, that goes along with kind of like what, John and I, to a point, he only likes the most expensive gear in the whole wide world. So that isn't for everybody. And I love gear, and I just will, and it's just, I don't know, that's like my weakness. Like, I'll buy that. But I want to know about it. So I want to be able to test it and see it and figure out what it is. Where, with John's mind, he can kind of look at it and see the weaknesses and see, well, that's not going to work or this or that. But I like to do that. And the same thing, like when we do have a guest on our show, that it has some sort of a product or whatever. We've not had a lot of guests on because it's either something that we wouldn't use or can't use or haven't had in our hands, so it's really difficult to ask informed questions with a product that you've never seen. And you can say, well, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Everything sounds like a great idea, or they wouldn't have come up with it. So in this case, using this platform for a new company, a new product, something like that, you're able to actually ask the people that are making it without having to purchase it. And, I can see where there's somewhat of a conflict there, because you can actually, that it's kind of like what I said, like when we are at ATA and you're in the small market circle there, and there, both the Johns, you guys have been to ATA. I don't know if you've been there, Alex, but there's guys that have everything under the sun, beef jerky stand to like a stick drilled into a wall. There's a thing where you can put a Halloween decoration in your tree stand. So it looks like there's a guy there. So the deer get used to it. That's the premise, right? And every time you walk by those people, it's like I feel like I'm pissing on their dreams. Like, because they're there and they're like, they obviously thought it was a good idea. They spent the money to buy a booth at ATA and spent the big money to go there to try to get this into stores and things like that. So asking the owners of companies, I mean, obviously they think it's a great idea and it's their passion. So you're going to get, that's why I like to have the item in my hand. But if you can't do that, the next best thing would be able to talk to them and kind of parse out the things that you want. So another thing, that we've got going on here, Charlie has his hand raised, so we will bring him in.
Well, Charlie?
All right. We'll unmute him. Yep. All right, Charlie. So you should be up on the screen.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Alex. This platform's amazing. The educational, your answer was perfect, what I was hoping to hear on the sponsorships. I had reached the point with my family being told what to do with box stores, trying to figure this out, going back to fishing or find something else. So I just wanted to get on and personally thank you that the educational versus entertainment value of this is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the experts and encourage those listening too to use the video and this aspect of it. Last night when I was able to ask the question to John, being able to interact and see his expression and him see mine. I got the camera switched to the right angle tonight, but there's so much power in this platform that just wanted to give you guys an attaboy, and I really enjoy it and appreciate the information it's giving me and my family.
Thanks a lot, Charlie. We really
awesome,
appreciate
Charlie.
that.
Thank you.
I will say one thing about John and myself. I know John worked in an archery shop his whole life. His parents owned an archery shop. So when you've been around archery as long as John and I have, and I've probably been to every ATA show since they started, you see stuff, and it costs a ton of money for somebody to be an entrepreneur and start a company. And you see stuff at those shows, just like you said, Adam, that they're not going to make it. And you just have to walk by the booth and maybe laugh once you get by. But, they've spent their life savings on that. Those booths are several $1,000s, and it costs a lot of money just to get an LLC together and get something started and get it manufactured. And, John, you're probably a lot like me, having worked at an archery shop as long as you have. You can tell stuff that's not going to work, and you can tell clothing by the stitch counts and how it's made. You can tell, archery accessories by how they're manufactured. Something that's good from something that's not relatively quickly. And I think that brings a lot to the table to viewers. Like, I don't endorse anything for money. If I endorse something, it's because I believe it's the absolute best product in this category that I know of. I would never endorse anything for money. I just wouldn't do it. I would accept the sponsorship, like on my YouTube channel, if it was something that I personally used, or something that even if I didn't use it was the best in its category. It's just not a category that I particularly use, like sticks or something. But I can definitely see John. Like Adam said, John knows before Adam does what's good and what's not. And that's because of all his years of experience working on the job.
Yeah, and real quick to that point, as far as sponsorships, I'm not necessarily against sponsorships, right? I mean, they're a part of business. That it's advertising. Businesses have to do these things to get people to buy their products so that those businesses continue to exist. That's a part of it. But when it starts to direct the information, that's where I see it being problematic. So that's why we're trying to keep that separate as much as possible, right? So anyway, that was my last thing on sponsorships. I'm not hating on sponsors or anybody who takes sponsorships. That's not it at all. So anyway, That was my only point there.
Sure. All right, we got another question here. We'll bring up Torin. Should get him on here.
Well, that's an interesting name. I've heard that one before.
And we'll see. All right, so your audio should be good. Oh, there he is.
How's it going?
It's going well. So I have a question. How are you guys going to make information that potentially new hunters or more experienced hunters haven't heard of available? So I know you mentioned the search bar and kind of being able to search for information kind of like Google, but let's say there's a concept that I'm unaware of. How am I going to be able to find that information if I missed it during the live stream?
So that's a really good point, actually, and that's something that we can do with the tagging of the information. So just to clarify, when we say searchable, it's not like you're going to have a search bar, right, where you're going to type in a term. You're actually going to see a list of available topics. In fact, I could show you. But point being is we could also organize those so that you click beginner videos or scouting for beginners. We can have those tagged so that you could select that and it could pull up a playlist, so to speak, almost just like YouTube. It could pull up a very, very specified playlist, just like any of those options would do. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
yeah, and I think to that point would be, I think that's the value in not necessarily being able to be in each one, but there's going to be a video component to each one of these, right? So you are going to be able to, if you go on the website right now, you see a schedule of all the things that are going to be on there. So you're going to be able to say, okay, well, this one is, John, this one is Dan, this one is this is that. Those are all things that you're going to be able to, kind of maybe prioritize your time or kind of go back and look at. And so that would be maybe something where the topic you're not necessarily familiar with, you'll be able to see what's upcoming. It's not that you have to be on here and be like, oh man, it's a whole new concept, but you'll be able to kind of pick and choose which ones you want to spend your time on, I guess. So
but the advantage of actually being on live like you are right now, if you have a specific question concerning your hunting, where you're hunting or your property or whatever, that's something that you can ask. And to me, a lot of times, if somebody asks a question about a specific property or how to do a specific thing, there's usually other people can take things away from that as well. So I think that's one of the advantages. I don't know what your hunting history is, but if you've been hunting a long time and you're a really good hunter, you're not going to be interested in going back and listening to something that a novice is going to ask. But, you can ask whatever you want on this platform.
And so, just real quick, I'm gonna try and do something here and put you on the spot a little bit. So, Torin, you're a saddle hunter, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm gonna try something here. He doesn't even know that I'm gonna do this. I am pulling up somebody else here. I'm pulling up probably another one of the foremost saddle hunters. Taylor Chamberlain. I'm bringing on. So we've got Taylor Chamberlain and John Eberhart on here. So let's say if you were new to saddle hunting and you wanted to talk to probably two guys that have killed more deer out of a saddle than anybody on the planet. Now you're in the room with them. So what questions would you have about killing deer from a saddle with two of the foremost saddle hunters?
So here's a question. All right. So I'm not a huge fan of the Ring of Steps, right? How can you...
John's not going to like hearing that.
I know. So I'm not a huge fan of the Ring of Steps, and I'm not a huge fan of a platform either. I like having the mobility to be able to get around trees, but because I'm a sitter, I like being able to have something there that I can put my feet down and put my knees up against a tree. You follow?
Yeah.
Okay. So last year, I just ran a stick and then had a screw-in step, and I'm athletic enough that my stick, it swivels back and forth, the step. And I can just move that back and forth, and I can shoot roughly 320 degrees around a tree.
So you're taking like a lone wolf stick and you're flipping you're crazy, man.
Yeah, but you're limiting
like
yourself to a tree diameter. There's no way you can hunt a very big tree and still shoot 320 degrees. So you're hunting a relatively small tree diameter. Otherwise, you'd have to have steps around the backside. Because you couldn't lean far enough to one side on a bigger diameter tree to take that shot. And also, the reason I'm a ring of steps guy is I like my movements when I'm in a tree, and I'm typically when you're going to move around in a tree, it's because a deer's coming in. Something's happening. And that's why you're moving. You're moving to either use the tree as a blocker on a non-target deer, or you're moving around to get a shot. And when you're moving, the best time to kill deer is during the rut phases and the foliage is down. So when you're making a move, you're more apt to get picked if you have big, harsh movements, body movements. So with a ring of steps, I gap mine like 8 to 10 inches apart, and depending on the diameter of the tree, I'll have 4 to 7 or 8 steps around the tree. And I can walk around the tree to the backside or to the right or however I want to go with very subtle movements where I've watched a lot of YouTube videos where somebody's on a platform or on a stick, like the top of the stick. And I know a guy that shot a really nice buck just off the top of the stick. And they put their feet on this kind of on one step on the top of the stick. And then they'll let their body swing around to the backside of the tree. And at some point in time, you're doing that to take a shot at a deer. And gravity is taking over your body during that swing, typically, if you're swinging around to shoot the backside. If you're swinging around to shoot to your 1 o'clock, you're swinging completely around to the backside of the tree while keeping your feet in one spot in the front. And anytime to me where you don't have 100% control of your steps and your body movement, where gravity is going to take over your body for a half a second, that's unacceptable to me. Because the mature deer where I'm hunting anyway, they pick that. My odds of getting picked are pretty high. Now, when I've hunted out west, that hasn't been an issue. But, here it is. I just feel like the ring of steps give me more an advantage because I can move around the tree very easily, no harsh movements. I can use the tree as a blocker. When you've got your stick on one side of the tree and you're facing the tree, that's pretty much where your body is. It's hard to even swing around the tree to use the tree as a blocker on a deer that's going to go by that you don't want to shoot. And Taylor, I don't know if you know Taylor, Thorne, but Taylor, he shoots deer like all year round. So he's killed more deer out of the saddle than anyone. I'll give you that one, Taylor.
I've killed a couple. So just out of curiosity, Torn, why do you not like the ring of steps?
Oh, I moved him back. I thought we were done, so
or even the
I'll bring him back. What I
I
was
like
doing,
your cup, John.
What?
I like that cup.
Very nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so Torn, you can answer now.
So the reason that I don't like the ring of steps is mostly just a comfort thing. I feel like my feet get fatigued for longer sits in a ring of steps.
But you're sitting, right? So you're kneeling in the tree. So
So I'm just using my knees to basically brace, but I would say 3/4 of my weight is the instep of my foot.
Okay.
How can
Does that
you
make sense?
stand on a step on the top of a stick and have that be more comfortable than on a flat when you got each foot planted on a flat top step?
Well, say that again, John.
If you have your feet together, basically your legs are together if you got your feet on the top of a stick, a single step on the top of a stick. how can your feet both be on that small space, almost your feet touching each other, versus your feet being more comfortable being on a steps that are maybe 16 inches apart? If you got them gapped 8 inches apart, you got one in between your legs, and your feet are on the two to each side of that one between your legs. Then you're nice and comfortable. And I just don't understand how your feet can be comfortable on what you're doing, yet not be comfortable on the step.
So both my feet aren't on a step. So I use a screw-in step, almost like a ring of steps. So basically, I want both worlds. I want a platform, so for the comfort of kneeling, but I want the mobility of the ring of steps. I don't like the ring of steps for an all-day sit or a long sit because it fatigues my legs. So when I'm using just one stick, I'll use it like a platform because it's so close to the screw-in step that it doesn't fatigue my legs, if that makes sense. Or it doesn't fatigue my feet, I should say.
So it's like the pressure on your feet. So like the hot spot like that. Yeah. And I think that's probably what he's talking about, Taylor, is, that to me is the big thing of standing on the top of your stick just in its own right, or on this single step or whatever, is that pressure.
So that's why I stopped using the ring of steps was I was getting like pressure points on my feet where, like, even when I was sitting, you have that like one flat spot maybe in the arch or ball or whatever,
right.
But it'll just continually kind of hit that spot. I was just curious how I was trying to envision in my mind like how you're using the single stick top and how that was more comfortable than a ring of steps, because in my mind, the ring of steps is just the same thing. I mean, you can use both a platform and steps around the tree. I've done that in the past. So it's kind of funny you bring this up. John and I were actually together last weekend. I was talking to John about this, but I feel like it's very important when you're saddle hunting, regardless of whether you're using a platform or ring of steps. I call it like keep your head on a swivel, but you have to constantly be monitoring your area, and you have to see the deer before the deer see you. If you're like playing on your phone and then you look up and you go, oh my God, there's a deer at 12 yards, you're done, because odds are you're very vulnerable in a position where you're going to get silhouetted or skylighted or whatever. So even if you're on a platform, and for me, I mean, I hunt from a platform. When I see deer, if I'm not going to shoot them, I'm moving my body very slowly to keep that tree in between the deer and myself. So I think you might want to play around with your system a little bit and try to figure out, if you're sitting to where your knees are in the tree, then that should be relieving the pressure completely, or 99% off your feet to where a ring of steps might work. The step system that John came out with or helped design with Cranford is really awesome. I stood on it recently and I really like it. That could pair really well with a platform or something like that, and maybe just like tinker with it and try to figure out your best option, because I think if you don't have a platform and you don't have a ring of steps, it's going to be really hard to get into position to take a shot potentially when the time comes, and you don't want to be limiting yourself or somewhat handicapping yourself to take that shot when the time comes. You know what I mean?
Sure.
All right, I'm going to pop Torin off. We got another guy that wants to come on and talk here. And I want to say hey to Taylor. Thanks. I knew I was going to put you on the spot, but I know you don't have a problem with that. So that's what I was going with. So we got our buddy Tim Clark here, who is another very accomplished saddle hunter, and he's appears to be sitting in a truck somewhere.
T-Mobile works.
He's really good.
Yeah, coming home from a side job.
I could.
I just had a little feedback on that question that Torin had. I hunted off a ring of steps for a handful of years, and I still do occasionally platform more now. But one thing that kind of stands out there is if you've got 75% of your weight on those steps, it's probably not really true that you're sitting a lot. One of the things that I really like to do is set up kind of like what John was talking about, where you're trying to keep the trunk of the tree between where you're expecting the deer to be and yourself. When you're sitting in that spot, and you can actually get yourself sitting and relieving some of that pressure from your feet, you can stay like that for long periods of time. And it helps, for one, it takes the fatigue off your feet. Two, it keeps you really still. Both of those things are really cool. And I think the other part that I found to really work well for me, and I've pretty much used this system a lot, is I put my platform at the same height as my stick, my last stick. And I'll put those usually with my stick on my weak side, and that lets me spread my feet a little bit, sort of like what you get with steps. It's more comfort. You like that comfort of the platform and the mobility to try to get yourself around the tree with something that you can actually get purchase on. I guess the biggest thing is to try to get a little bit of that pressure off your feet by actually staying in that saddle with your knee against the tree, and it'll help to relieve that pressure and give you a long-term comfort, the ability to sit still.
I'm in 100% agreement with both those things. I think it's really important to, like, regardless of what your system is, I probably only have about 5% of my weight on my feet until I have to be moving around.
I'm the same way.
And if I'm leaning, I'll have my heels on my platform, but my toes are up on the tree. They're kind of crammed in there, like funky, but it's just my weight's in my butt. It's in the saddle. I'm letting the saddle do the work until it's time to switch into, kill mode is what I call it. But, also that keeps you still, and that's, I'm in full agreement with that. I also do exactly what he says, where I put my top of my stick at the same height as my platform base, and I'll put that stick, if I'm able to, 90 degrees around to clockwise from where my platform is. So that allows me to rotate on a strong shot and then shoot a strong shot, all the way back to the 3 o'clock position, and then a strong shot all the way back to 3 o'clock again. So I'm kind of able to walk around the tree with that stick being there. So it's kind of like a hybrid between ring of steps and platform.
I gotta say one thing real quick. I'm the same way, Taylor. I have most of my weight in my butt when I'm hanging. But when my YouTube thing comes out, you guys can see where I was ring of steps. I had trees that couldn't hunt off just a platform. I had a lot of really big things.
Yeah, you have some gnarly, big, wide trees, right?
Well, I mean, Taylor, thanks for jumping on here. And like I said, all we're doing tonight is this platform right here is designed strictly for information. And I just wanted to showcase bringing guys on to talk and try to showcase that functionality. And, I mean, I guess tonight is a perfect example of you never know who else is watching. So, for me to be able to pull you in here, to be able to, you missed Walter. He was in here. We pulled him on. He said a few things about you, I think, so you might need to text him. But yeah, so
chilling.
so just to be able to bring people on and just strictly get that information and be able to ask those pointed questions to people, so I'll let you be back to casual there, Taylor, but I do appreciate.
I'm happy to help. I mean, and I appreciate you having me on, but it's a super cool platform, and to be able to, ask you guys questions, or just be able to ask, John questions, and John is the reason that I hunt from a saddle. And if you have the opportunity to talk and hang out with a living legend that John is, you can take advantage of it at all times, man. It's the coolest thing in the world.
Great seeing you again. I didn't know you were going to be on here
Cool.
Surprise! I'm following you.
All right, thanks, Taylor.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm sorry, Alex, if I keep just
this is awesome.
jumping around here, but I just, like I said, I wanted to do this tonight, and you had said we'll come on and do a podcast, but I wanted to showcase the functionality of this and be able to kind of spotlight what I think we both know that this can be, and John the same way, just to be able to show the ability to have those conversations with whoever is in the room. Tonight is kind of like I said, I'm drinking beer, it's my show, I'll do what I'm going to do, but I know the names that are on the side, and so as this thing progresses, and if people keep continuing to show up, subscribe, it's going to be easier. And I think that goes back to the question that Jason had asked about the forum, right? So it's going to be very easy to recognize some names and bring people in and be able to have these conversations and do things like that. So I guess along that note, what are your opinions of the way that things are going on this podcast? Like I said, I'm using your platform, to somewhat interview you, but I'm also just blowing up the complete topic and doing whatever I want to. So
this is exactly how it's supposed to go, right? We try and create a framework for this, whatever you want to call this. But in reality, this is supposed to be like you're hanging out with John or all of us, right? This is supposed to be just a collaboration. And, I have some other, I have some thoughts about, we also have the capability to do literally like open online hangouts. Think of it as so take like the Hunting Beast forum, right? One of the most popular hunting forums out there. Think about that, but in a live format where instead of like you refreshing the page every time, you want to see if somebody responded to whatever you said, you literally just get on at a set time and you have this conversation. So that's another thing we can do. We're not really there yet infrastructure wise, but we do have that capability, and I think it's really cool. And that's the point of this. It's live collaboration, live sharing of ideas. And it's just, when you're able to do it real time this fast, you're able to move faster. Things move faster, questions get answered faster, and you learn faster. So you're doing a heck of a job. This is the point of this platform. So.
And so, John Boersma, this you had mentioned previously how you had appreciated when we were doing our Zoom meetings and stuff like that. So it went from there was 20 people in the room here, and we're at 13 right now, and it's been as high as 25, 30, whatever, going ebb and flow as people have time. And the same thing, you can't just always sit down and do this like you and I make time for every single night this week. When we were doing our Zoom meetings and things like that, it could be a little hectic. It could be somewhat overwhelming with everybody on the screen. How do you see this from that standpoint versus the ones that we were doing where everybody's there and active, and if somebody's dog's barking, it takes over the mic and stuff like that?
Well, like this format here is, I mean, the Zoom thing was cool, but this is much more structured. You're not getting the dogs barking like a kid opened the door a couple times. But what's nice about this is like, when you listen to a podcast and it's like, in a good podcast, it's like you're a fly on the wall and you're in the conversation, but you can't ask sometimes the information that you're talking about is almost perfect, but there's like one little aspect that you would like to, hear. Well, like with this platform, now you can pipe in and get that one specific topic that you're looking for. So this is it's going to be great.
And John's the most critical person that I know, so I do. I say that with the utmost sincerity, John. That's why I love you. That's why I keep you around, right?
It's not for my speaking abilities like my daughter.
Well, Alex and John, I think, that's kind of all we've got for tonight and everything. Alex, I know you've got 100 other things to do and you're just chomping at the bit, right? But it was really nice to be able to, like I said, use this, bring people in, take the time. So from that standpoint, what closing thoughts do you have, and where can people, how do they go about this? What do they do?
So I guess first off, I think that, and Adam, I have to give you credit for having this idea to do this. And I appreciate you guys, doing your podcast on the platform, right? Because, it's been one of the challenges that I've had is showcasing what this is. If you enter the session, it's very obvious, right? The advantages, but from a traditional marketing perspective, it's very difficult to communicate that. My point is, I think that everybody will see some more free sessions. I think that right now we don't have the startup sessions free, but that's changing. They are going to be free. And the reason we can't just do wild free sessions, right, is because we pay for this webinar platform, and it's limited to the number of people, and the number of people determine cost. So you can see how that can run away on me really fast from a cost perspective. But these free sessions are so valuable. So thank you for doing that. Now, anybody out there who's watching this and wants to get involved in the discussions with John, Dan, Mario, Tom, Garrett, the passes are available. There are two different tiers, I guess, right now. One is called the Basics, and the other is an All Access Pass. The difference is the All Access Pass gets you access to literally everything. The Basics only gets you access to, we call them general sessions. And again, this is something we're optimizing. But the point is that the people who pay for the All Access Pass, we want to make sure that they have that premium experience so that when they're on with John, they are, in fact, able to they get their question answered in that session. So that's why we've set up that tier level. But that's how we're doing it right now. We're open for suggestions. That's how it's set up right now. And that can all be purchased through the site. We also have the opportunity to just buy passes for the recorded sessions if your work schedule or I've had a couple people email and say, my work schedule doesn't allow me to attend the live sessions. Can I only go to the recorded sessions? So we've made a plan that's recorded sessions only. Same goes for the vital cuts if you only want the short little clips of just the very specific searchable information. Other than that, I want to thank everybody, John, both Johns here, Adam, you're doing a heck of a job. I can't thank you enough for your help. And then obviously all of our members. I mean, you guys are the only reason this is going into its second month, right? Without you guys, this doesn't exist. There's costs, and this is the only way this is possible to have you guys involved. So, thank you. That's all I got.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's all we've got for tonight. And this the one downfall of this platform, I guess I would say, is that once you click done, it's gone. There's no hanging around with, John, Alex, and I to decompress or do anything like that. So as soon as we hit over, it's over. No more transmission. So, that's what we've got for this evening. And I just want to thank you guys for listening and tuning in and participating. And, it's been fun. And maybe we'll be able to do this again sometime if we get enough interest. But I think that's going to do it for this evening. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
and sit down.